Welcome back! Last week I taught you how to draw rocks. This week let's do grass. Come on, let's get started. I'm one of the developers working on Dwarf. It's a tower defense dungeon crawler.
Wishlist it on Steam.
Okay, so just some quick advice. When you're searching for images, instead of searching for them on Google Images, search for them on Pinterest. Why? Because if there's something that you like, instead of saving it to your computer, you can just add it to a board. So you can just go ahead and search something like pixel grass, and then you'll have a ton of great references. You can also follow people like me, and I create my own boards. And you can follow these boards where I have, for example, pixel art characters, pixel art references, just character references, etc. So there are a couple of different ways to do grass, the easiest of which is to just draw 3 lines with the center line being a little bit taller like here. And then a little bit more complicated than that is when you have 3 blades, but you could just give them a little bit more detail. But as you can see here, the blades of grass are darker than the grass underneath it. This is just going to be a design choice by you, whether you want to go darker or you want to go lighter. In this example, the blades of grass are lighter. Funny thing about this image is it has 3 different kinds of blades of grass, and it looks kind of odd because one of them looks like a texture on the ground and the other ones look like they're sticking out because they have outlines. I don't think this is what you should do in your game. Try not to have too many different kinds of grass designs. It's funny how blades of grass can completely change the feel of your game. The grass here is a tint of blue, and the blades aren't sharp. They're these little lumps. I personally prefer to go lighter with the blades of grass. It just makes sense to me that they would have more light on them. Okay, so here I am in ASCII Sprite. If you want a key, let me know in the comment section below, and here's a free key for whoever's the first one to use it. Okay, so the simplest blade of grass that you can do is just go ahead and color pick your grass color. You can go darker or lighter. There's not really a wrong or right way. And literally this right here is the simplest way that you can do grass. You can decide whether you prefer going lighter or you prefer going darker. So I'm against creating a texture for the grass. I think that it makes it harder, it decreases readability. It makes it harder to see the characters on the background. I prefer that mostly the grass is solid colors. But let's say you have a game where it's like a 16 by 16 and you want to create grass tiles. Instead of repeating the grass tiles, what you can do is you can create a couple of different random grass tiles where the grass is just, you know, a little bit different in each one of these, and then randomize it in whatever software that you're using to draw the grass. So I prefer to make sort of like tile variations like this and then randomize it instead of having a repeatable tile on the ground, because it'll be obvious that it's repeatable and it'll just make it harder, it'll look less natural, etc. Okay, so we have the 3 lines, which is a really simple way to do grass, and then another one is to draw a little V shape to give it a little bit more style. You know, you can have these other V shapes next to it, or here and there do a little bit of this. You can mix all 3 of these, just create these tiny little variations, and it's enough to create a cool variety of grass with different vibes. But let me teach you now how to do, you know, something a little bit cooler than that, right? So if you want to do something a little bit neater, in general, you want to stick to 3 blades of grass, right? The centerpiece of grass is going to be the tallest one. For this, I'm also going to give it an outline. So let's just go ahead and give this an outline. I'm not doing corners here because we want this blade of grass to seem sharp. Of course, this could be your style, but in general, you want to keep it almost like, you know, round near the top. So I'm going to do that blade, and then the other blades could be this simple. You know, you could do something as simple as that, but to make it a little more interesting, these side blades, as you can imagine, would look a little bit cooler if they went out to the sides. And I like to create a bit of variation. All right, there you go. So what I did there is I gave the grass a little bit of shading. The problem with making the grass too detailed like this is that you can draw too much attention to it. It's really important to keep the grass kind of subtle. So like, of course you could give your grass a black outline, but usually what I do personally is I reserve black outlines for solid objects, and it's just visual language. So I prefer not to give grass black outlines if it's not solid. So for example, you might have this grass on the floor, but a bush next to it, and the bush would have the black outline because you can't walk through the bush. All right, let's add even more detail. So instead of just making them super thin, I'm kind of doubling the amount of pixels I'm using now. This right here is a very, very common grass shape that you'll see in a lot of pixel games. But to make this look a little bit better, what you can do is lighten, make the tips even brighter. It makes it look more like a piece of grass, especially one that's folding over. All right, enough of that easy stuff. Let's draw some really detailed art. So you might use those previous techniques for like a 16 by 16, but let's let's assume that you're doing like 32 by 32 resolution per tile, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So in this case, you can make the grass look a lot more realistic than 3 lines. So I increased the brightness of my green, but if you remember in previous videos where I talk about shading, we talk about hue shifting. And when you're hue shifting, you're either going to go towards your cool colors or you're going to go towards your warm colors. In this case, I'm going to go towards warms, so I'm going to go towards yellow. So not only did I make the green more saturated and lowered, increased vibrance, lowered saturation, but I also hue shifted it a little bit. And we're going to use this sort of like the base color for the leaf. And we don't need to make it so thin anymore. We can do something a lot thicker like this. But you can't really tell what this is without shading. So let me show you how we're going to shade this. We're going to increase the value even more, decrease the saturation, and there, I think that's good. Something like this. So one more thing is go ahead and go to your black, and then go to like about halfway, and we're going to create the shadow for the grass. I'm actually going to make this on a separate layer because I'll show you something kind of cool. So just make a new layer, name it shadow, and here on the alpha, go to 255, which is 100%. And here we're just going to add, a little shadow, maybe something like that. I don't know. But the cool thing is with the layer, we can control the alpha, and then whenever we draw shadows anywhere else, we can change the alpha for all of them. This also makes it easier to remember what the alpha was, because let's say I clicked here and I was on like 63, and I draw, you know, shade here. Also, if you get on top, if you do that, it'll screw it up. And then let's say next time I come back and I forget what number the alpha was on when I'm trying to do the shading. So I like to do the shadows on another layer, and then just change that entire layer's opacity. All right, so I just duplicated it a few times, and I'm gonna create some extra blades of grass here.
Another one.
I'm gonna make these a little bit smaller. And you can see it's coming out pretty good. So you can see that's coming out pretty good. It does look a little bit jungly because the blades are a little bit big. But you can definitely shrink those blades down. You can just, if you just did little blades like this, it wouldn't look so jungly. I'm shrinking these so that way, see that? I shrunk it so that way it wouldn't look so overgrown. And there you go. Here are some big grass blades. Then here are some smaller grass blades. And here are even smaller grass blades using the same technique. So in general, basically what I'm doing is making the tips a lighter green, lowering the saturation on the tips. And then I'm putting shading in between the grass blades or under the piece that is folding over. So that way there's a little bit more contrast and a little bit more dimension to the grass. I know this is a shitty drawing, but basically this is what this represents. Okay, so let me show you another style before we end this. So it's kind of cute if you create these little round pieces of grass, and also feel free to you know, change what the grass color is. If you want to have a unique game, you know, make the grass blades maybe a little bit bluish green, a little bit teal, you know. So if you want to add a little bit of shading to this, make the bottom ones a little bit darker, and then I don't know, maybe a little bit of shadow like that. Nah, for this one I'm not gonna add shadow. Alright, then I think these are too far apart. They need to be closer like that. Maybe even like that. Look over here and see what it looks like. This is just like a cute, you know, cute round piece of grass. I think I'm gonna keep it at this. Okay, so here I just did some other styles, two other styles of for the grass. And what I want to show you is, don't be afraid to, you know, change these to different colors. Like, you can have the grass be this yellow and it'll create a vibe. Or feel free to go the other way and make it a little bit blue. It'll still look pretty decent. You don't have to always put green on green. Pokemon has blue grass in a bunch of areas. So I drew a couple more styles of grass here. The top and bottom are the same style, and feel free to use these in your games. In the description there's going to be a link to my itch where I have free to use pixel art assets, and I'm going to keep adding to these, so you should go ahead and follow me. I'd appreciate that. So I made this little game called Gerb's Adventure, and here you can see all the different kinds of grass that I used. I used the three little dots here, and there's variations of each one. You can see these tiles are randomized. And then I also did this the cute little round ones, and then I also tried doing ones with an outline. And in this case, I used it to sort of make it look like the grass near the forest, like thicker grass. By the way, all these art assets in this Gerb's Adventure are free for you to use in your game. And if you do add color to them, if someone was to color them, please send them to me so I can add them to the sprite pack with color. If you like pixel art, follow me on Twitter. I'll see you next week. Dev life.